Hi, Sarah Key here. I am frequently asked what I do think of stand-up desks, good or bad. Should your employer pay for one? Is it worth it, etc., etc. I must admit I do think it is slightly a first world problem, even though we do know that there are inherent problems with sitting, and we all do sit a lot. You can see here this article published in 2014. Strangely enough, Indonesia and the Philippines more indolent than the US, than the UK, than Australia, about middle ranking. Hard to believe that France and Italy do it so much less, but never mind. So we do sit a lot. TV, green, laptop and PC, blue, smartphone, yellow, so a lot of people on their smartphone, and then tablet in red. So sitting has its complications. Computers really are the bane of our life. It's all to do with the fact that we're so static when we're on a computer. We are rigid. Our huge frame, I should say, focused over the movement of that tiny cursor. So what I have noticed in the course of my professional career is that with the advent of computers, it's really the shoulder, it's the upper spine that's causing more havoc than the lower. And you can see shoulder and neck are usually associated, and it's all to do with his head poking forward so much in front of the line of gravity, although of course lumbar problems are absolutely endemic too with sitting, and that's to do with the physical spinal compression. The business about sitting that is so bad for us is that our spine loses its lovely elongated S-bend here, although you can't see the neck, which is another concave curve up here, very heavy head, not shown. Over time you tend to lose that, and you tend to slump, and you slump into what we call a C-bend, which compresses the discs at the front here, which are between the vertebrae, and that pushes out fluid. Now, we're meant to lose fluid from our discs. There's a very stately fluid exchange that nourishes the disc and expels waste products, and we all lose about 20% through the course of a day. But in the first 2 hours of sitting, we lose half of that. So you can see why I like you to get up at least every 2 hours, if not before, preferably before, to try and, first of all, stop that steady egress of fluid, but to also suck some fluid in, which you can do by getting up, more particularly if you squat or touch your toes, which I get to later. So it has been seen or postulated that the way forward to overcome the ill effects of sitting is to stand. You can see that I don't really go for that. It's just as unnatural to stand stock still as it is to sit. In fact, what's very difficult when you're standing is to control your belly, and what happens is that you develop an accentuated lumbar curve the other way because your belly lets go and the spine telescopes down. So here are the discs in between, and here are the facet joints at the back. If you let go at the front, your spine will arch more. It's very hard to hold your tummy in. So instead of compressing the discs too much as you do while you're in sitting, if you're in standing, you're compressing the facet joints too much. And you can see here a very accentuated lumbar curve. Let's keep going. Obviously made worse by wearing high heels, because that just throws the lumbar spine into more of an arch. Quite ridiculous to think that you can stand like that. What happens then with standing is that with the lack of control at the front, remember that your core muscles, your abdominal muscles, particularly the deep ones, find it very difficult to stay switched on to support the spine from the front. So gradually, unless you've got extremely strong abdominal muscles, is your belly lets go and hangs out, and that allows your lumbar spine to hang forward with a forward pelvic tilt. Difficult to stay upright, and so what one tends to do is to try and minimize the lumbar curve. Now obviously this is an extreme, but this is why some of the desks have a little rail to put your foot up on, just as the old-fashioned saloon bar with no seating allowed the dear old punters to put their feet up on a bar there to actually lessen the lumbar hollow and make you more comfortable. But as you might imagine, it's not great for the skeleton to be standing on one leg. The other thing, of course, is that there are various other systems, that not only the skeletal system, that is affected by being very, very static. Just as you shouldn't be static with sitting, you shouldn't be static with standing. And one of the main disadvantages is that the venous blood wells up in the legs with back pressure. If you're standing still and not coursing along, pumping your legs as you do when you're walking, for example, then the muscles are not helping the blood get back up the hill to the heart. And so you get this nasty back pressure where the veins in the legs become incompetent, and then the veins start to distend and swell with all that stale blood welling up with back pressure. So it also means that the heart is working harder with you with static standing. But again, if you've got incipient problems with any of the leg joints, including your sacroiliac, so forget about the back, sacroiliac, hips, knees and ankles, much harder if you're standing on those legs. It is much more restful to sit. What happens too, of course, is that your feet flatten. The foot is made by the bones slotted together in the foot make this beautiful arch, rather like the sandstone arch of a bridge with the keystone at the top, with not enough muscle exertion because you're too static. The arch flattens, and what you can get is plantar fasciitis, extremely painful feet, where the fascia, which is like a sort of calico band across the base of the foot, gets stretched as the arch flattens. Very uncomfortable. One of the other disadvantages too of standing is that unless you've got very good eyesight, then you don't really stand like this. You tend to poke your neck forward, much more so than you do with sitting because you're further away, and that too creates neck problems right here, which is where we see so much trouble with computers. One of the great advantages of a standing desk, and really to my mind the only advantage, is the activity of getting up. So we know that particularly standing up from sitting on the ground to getting up sucks vast amounts of sugar out of the blood, which is why activity is the all-encompassing panacea for reducing the likelihood of diabetes. It's really the activity of a standing desk that's the beneficial thing. Getting up and down, it's not really standing there stock still. And if you really want to actually bypass the need for one of these expensive desks, then really what you can do, the very best thing you can do is squat. And I mean squatting just exactly as we've shown here. Far better to hang on because you get this lovely traction right down through your spine, and you tuck your bottom towards the floor, and you even bounce a little bit towards the floor. That is nature's way of decompressing the spine, pulling the spinal segments apart. And you only have to do it for a few seconds, 10 seconds at the most, to have an incredibly beneficial effect. You can hang on to your desk literally as long as you don't pull it over. Also, simply bending over and touching your toes is great. Now, some of the standing desk arrangements actually lift the desk itself. This is obviously a much simpler arrangement, but again, that's not cheap. That's over 500 Australian dollars, that actual desk raiser. So there's much more information in my Simple Back Pain website, all sorts of stuff. You can go to the site map at the top and you can see over 130 pages. Here's all sorts of things along here that you can go through. Here's the site map or the search option. Take yourself through it yourself. Or better still, go straight to using the back block. That's really the best thing you can do yourself at home every night. Squatting is what I call decompression on the run, so you can literally punctuate your day with squatting. But really, to cope with sitting, you need to be using a back block. You need to be lying in this position, the classic anti-sitting position, every evening when you get home to undo the ill effects of sitting. And there we go.